Mr. Dumile Mateza. I mean, if I would introduce you, I would say a legend in the broadcasting sphere, a voice and a face that we grew up to. One of the most prominent broadcasters in our country. A sports guru. And I say you're a sports guru because I recently heard an interview on SAFM with Utabiso Musia after the passing away of James Small. And I was on the road and I got excited when I heard your voice. And as you started speaking about James Small, about the history of the Springboks, I was like, this man is a treasure. And I somehow feel like we don't appreciate enough people like you until Kutua Agaseko. And then only then we wake up and we're like, wow, about Dumile Mateza was such a treasure. Thank you very much for joining me. How did you get to be where you are? Where did it all start? Ukhulelepi? Ungowapi?
I've answered this question many times, and probably I've tweaked it somehow at some places. I grew up in a very small town in the Eastern Cape, in the west of the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape is the Paya Episho, Wakuku Eastern Cape, a Paya Kulandao, Siguyo.
Here we go with politics. So early.
The Eastern Cape is the Gwinda Uktose Carriedo. Carriedo is on your way to Cape Town, but not on the N2. It's on the inland, a little bit inland, just on the other side of the Tsitsikamma range of mountains, inland. That's a little town where John Forster was buried. That's where I was born. And I went to school there, primary school, and then I went to Port Elizabeth for secondary and high school, to Newell and Loiso first, and then Newell High School.
Carriedo.
Yes.
I remember you told me about this place.
Yes.
And I won't lie, because Namgwase Pisho, I didn't know about the Carriedo. So I think you do as a Pisho.
So I grew up in Carriedo, and then I went to PE to school. And as I said to you in the car, I used to follow all broadcasters. Given Kleby was one of them. I got a liking to Given because of his detail. He was detailed in the way he told his story. I remember one time he was doing a documentary series on sports people, and he was doing a story about the Konzi boxer Konzi as a Dinano Aubrey Kid Cool Peter, and he would say Sifike Aubrey Igagamelilanga. You know, you would want to think this man has some affinity with whoever he's talking about. The other one was he was doing a cricket commentary given here at the Wanderers, I think. And then he spoke about the Chappell brothers. There was Trevor Chappell, there was Ian Chappell, there was another Chappell. I think there are 4 Chappell brothers in Australia. And he spoke about cricket players. Okay. And he spoke about what he called Onyana Bakatatu Chappell. And you think that he knows them personally. And that's what I liked from him. And then there was another general I used to listen to. Was an English commentator, Charles Fortune. Charles Fortune was this guy, was also a rounded commentator, broadcaster, in other words. He was a school teacher at Graham College in Grahamstown. And then he was asked, because the SABC didn't have an English commentator, so they asked him to come up and do commentary for them. And he came up, and that was, he never went back to Grahamstown. He stayed in Johannesburg. For instance, one time he was doing commentary in Port Elizabeth, where Graham Pollock was playing. And he was admiring the way this guy was playing, the timing, the sweetness with which he hit the ball, and say, I have no adjectives to use. I've used all my adjectives. I have no... Those things are very important. And I took these things in me, And when we were doing orals at school,
Okay.
I then said to myself, but doing commentary is using a language. And for oral work, for orals at school, I used to do commentary in Xhosa, English, and Afrikaans. That's how I did, that's how I got to like this kind of work.
So ulinxila lelwimi, and in what you've just described,
Yes.
that is what commentary is all about, and being able to paint a picture, because radio batch.
Well,
But
yes,
the theatre
being
of
able
the
to paint,
mind.
it's just, yes, radio is you take the game to the people. On TV, you interpret
Okay.
the action that
Yes.
people see.
Okay.
You don't tell us what we see, but you interpret what is happening. In other words, there's a book that I read that I have at home amongst many that I have collected. It's a book by a guy called Christopher Martin Jenkins. Christopher Martin Jenkins was a commentator and a cricket writer for the Daily Telegraph, and later became a cricket commentator for Britain, for BBC. They have a radio program on BBC which they call Ball by Ball. In other words, the commentary is done ball by ball. So this book is also titled Ball by Ball. In this book, he says, when they were told to make the transition from radio to television, they were told on television, you don't say anything unless you've got something to add.
Okay. Now, in your days growing up, did you ever have the privilege to meet these people that have influenced you to be this legendary broadcaster that we can look back at and admire?
I've met all of these people.
Okay. Tell us about those experiences.
Given I've met when I was in Port Elizabeth at school, because we would bump into each other when he goes and does an OB in the township, so we'd bump against each other, but I never had a very strong relationship with him as I had with somebody like Charles Fortune, because when I arrived in Johannesburg in 1980, Charles Fortune was the secretary, the honorary secretary of the South African Cricket Association. Then they were called SACA. The South African Cricket Association, which was the wide body of cricket. You must remember at the time, there was a South African Cricket Association, which was for whites, whose president was Billy Wooden, and Charles Fortune was the secretary. And then there was the South African Cricket Board, which was for blacks, whose president was Ashton Dunjwa, and the secretary was one Pat Coase, who happened to be my principal when I was at Newell High School. Okay. And then you had SABC, the South African Cricket Board of Control, that had people like Abdul Bamji and all of those guys who were playing there. So that one was for coloureds and Indians. And that's how sport in South Africa was constituted at the time. And sometimes one gets very upset when people don't put things, before you talk about anything, put things into perspective.
Give context, give historical background.
The other day we had a big fight about, why do you support the All Blacks? I said, I support the All Blacks today. For instance, today I was putting down something on Facebook where I was writing and said, I started supporting the All Blacks in 1970. In 1970, the All Blacks, under the leadership of Brian Lohore, came to South Africa to come and play here. They had in earlier matches, they were not allowed to bring Maori players with them. Maori players are those who come from Samoa, a little bit of Samoan blood or Fijian blood, and
or Jonalom.
Not necessarily. Some of them are quite light in complexion.
Yeah.
Some of them are quite light in complexion, but they're Maoris. So they were not allowed to come here because of South Africa's sports policy of apartheid, of not wanting blacks to play with white people in this country. And so they were not allowed to come here. Okay. In 1970, they were allowed to bring with them a guy called Brian Williams. And Brian Williams was playing on the wing for the All Blacks. If you go to the old stadium in Port Elizabeth called the Boet Erasmus Stadium, then there used to be
Williams.
No. He's also Maori, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
There used to be a stand. We used to call it the railway stand.
Okay.
There was an old train that was there at that stand. That's where blacks were made to sit, at a separate stand. And when you talk to people about why many black people like ourselves, or people of old, don't get excited about Springbok rugby, people don't understand. They don't want to know that information. They don't want to know that history.
Luckily for me, I worked with a gentleman called Mark Fredericks from East London, who's a big rugby supporter. He's one of those people who support the All Blacks. So I got that context and that history of why our so-called coloureds and our so-called black
Was
people.
it Mark or Greg?
Mark Fredericks.
Oh, there was Greg too. Probably Greg is his brother.
Oh, Greg. Gabapi was a Kimberley originally
Greg
or from East
I
London?
don't know. Greg is from East London. He is now CEO of the Houghton Cricket.
Okay. I wouldn't know. But Mark Fredericks
used to work for the Department of Sport.
Okay. So now you exposed to these people, but how did you get started in the broadcasting industry?
Well,
paint us a picture.
It so happened, life is a funny thing. I finished school in Port Elizabeth in 1979. And then I went home. It was troublesome. Those years were troublesome. We're coming out of the 1977 passing of Steve Biko and all of those years that were troublesome up to 1985. 1985, 86. Yeah. Those years were troublesome. So I get home and my dad says to me, there's a school up the road here. They are looking for a teacher. Okay. I said, but I'm not a teacher. Why would I go and go as there and be a teacher? And then I sat back and I thought about this. And I said to myself, I'm going to be sitting here doing nothing. And yet there is this opportunity. Why don't I go to the school and just find out? Mm-hmm. And I say to my dad, okay, I'll go there. And I go there on a Friday. And as I arrive, I sit down with the teacher. The teacher says to me, no, this is not a teacher's post. Okay. This is a principal post.
Oh, okay.
I am leaving. So you are going to take over from me as a principal of the school. I am leaving.
I got interview.
No, this is the interview.
Okay.
And I said, but how can I have not trained as a teacher? He said to me, no, I've listened to you. And I think you'll be able to do this job. You'll just do what was done to you. Where had he been
listening to you?
No. He was listening to me in the discussion we had.
Okay.
And then I said to him, no, it's not for me. Let me think about it. And then I went to bed, and he went to bed to his house. The following day, he is taking the bus to Port Elizabeth to take up a new post, Aaron card. And I am supposed to give him an answer whether I'm taking this position or not. So we both get onto this bus because I'm going to get off in Carriedo and he's going further down to PE. As I get off the bus, I say to him, I'll take that position. He says, yes, that's what I wanted to hear. And I get off. And on Monday, the school's open on a Tuesday, but I must report on Monday. So on Monday, I go there. And I think I was still 22, 21, 22 or 20 or 19, somewhere there.
This does not sound right. It sounds like corruption. Okay, you get there.
I get there and I get a briefing about the school from the teachers that are there. And they tell me this school is classified as even though it's in the township, it's classified as a farm school.
Okay.
So it goes up to start at 6. So it reports to a circuit office that is in Utenhage. And I then have to start on Tuesday. And just to familiarize myself on Tuesday because I don't know. And then I then pick up that there's something not right. The wife to the principal who's left stayed behind. Okay. And she seemed to think that she should have made the principal. And I said,
the wife of the same guy that put you.
yes.
Okay.
She should have been made. But she doesn't say so, but you can see it in her reaction to things. But then I got a lot of support from younger teachers who were there because I was also young.
No, but I'm confused, Bratuns. Did you do teaching?
No, I didn't do teaching.
So where did you come from to get to this
high
position?
school? From high school.
Okay. That's talent right there.
So I get into the school and I size up the kids and I pick up. There's a lack of understanding of Xhosa from many of them because that area is a lot more colored area. It's in the Langkloof.
Okay. Yeah,
so I then sit down and I structure something and I said one of the first things I want them to do is probably Imvo used to come out on a Friday, so I'm going to buy Imvo, and they're all going to have a
old
period.
Newspaper, right?
Yes, they're all going to have a period where they read Imvo for that period, and then they will. Then we are going. One of the other things I introduced was music.
Okay,
but I then took Xhosa hymns like Udanai Kapikatika Chamzashe, and I taught them these things. One of the big things that happened whilst I was there, the school inspector, the circuit inspector, got a liking to me. He liked me immediately. I don't know, because of my proficiency in Afrikaans, I'm not sure. He got a liking to me. I said, it's people like yourself that we need to build these schools. So we then had I think Mr. Mjesha was one of the circuit inspectors, Koenig Mjesha, who used to be the president of the South African Rugby Association, Amakos.
Okay.
Isara.
Okay.
And then we fell onto a district that included Knysna, Plettenberg Bay, George. I don't know which part again. All that part fell in sport.
Okay.
So then the other thing I did was, I said, we're going to have athletics. We must produce an athletics team.
Okay.
So I organized this athletics day.
So you were passionate about sport?
Yes. I organized this athletics day and everybody is surprised. I said, one of the things that's going to make people calm is when we have a public address system. I went to the white school. And I asked them to borrow us a public address system. And they said, no, we don't have a public address system. When we want one, we go to Karedo. The principal of Karedo has a public address system.
Okay.
I know this guy personally. My mother used to work for him. So I went there and I borrowed this public address system. On Saturday, I then went to the colored school and I asked them to give to lend us their teachers to be officials at the athletics. Okay. So we had this huge athletics day, something that's never happened before. And everybody of the township came and watched, and it was a huge thing because we've got to select a team to represent the region. So everybody is here. It's a huge thing. I organize this thing, and then we travel to Knysna. When we got to Knysna, for some reason, I was asked to do the public address thing, to take the microphone and address and speak and become the stadium announcer.
This was now a regional
tournament, yes. And then at the same time, whilst I was there, the SABC announced that it is going to start SABC 2 and 3, and they'll be recruiting
What year is this?
people. This is 1980.
Okay.
And they will be recruiting people to come and help. And to come and be trained at the SABC. So I apply.
Which SABC? Joburg or PE? Okay,
I
Joburg.
apply to Joburg. And Joburg responds and Joburg says, go to King Limsau.
Hold on. So you go to this regional event, you take over the public address system, you do very well.
Yes.
Round about this time, there's this advert from the SABC saying they are looking for new voice talent, or
not necessarily voice talent. They were just training. We're going to train people in television, black people in all
SABC
aspects on television. Yes.
Okay.
So when I was accepted, I was then asked for an interview to go to King Limstown.
My hometown.
Yes. So I go to King Limstown. I know nobody in King Limstown. What am I going to do? I know nobody there, but I'm going. I then asked a friend of mine, Ududumtana.
Okay.
Asked Dudu, where can I stay there? He arranged accommodation for me with some people in the police who worked for the Sky.
Okay.
And I stayed with them as well, Icha.
Mm.
And then I went to the interview. Radio
Xhosa yes.
Yes. I went there. I bumped into Thandi Mesajwa there, was also coming for an interview.
Okay.
So we did this interview. And at the end of the interview, I think Givi was in charge of the interview because they wanted to understand our proficiency in Xhosa.
Okay.
And somebody then asked the question, the last question Givi, I remember, asked was, how would you, because apparently...
Sorry, had you met him prior to this?
No, I had.
You had. So we are interview.
Yeah. So then at the end, he asked me, I think the whole thing was based on, it touched on Umkai. And then he asked me, how would you rate Umkai amongst other poets? That Umkai can be rated in the same way the Afrikaners rate Leopold. There was an Afrikaner poet called Leopold, Louis Leopold. And everyone was surprised. How do you know Louis Leopold? Did you know? I've read the poetry already. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So then I was told from there I had to come to Johannesburg. I came to Johannesburg by train in December of 1980 and arrived at the SABC, nowhere to stay, like every one of us.
Obviously, you come to Joburg because you have gotten the post.
Yes.
Right, okay.
But I was now going to work at the SABC in the language department. We arrive in Johannesburg, all of us from different parts of the world. When TV was about to start, then they made all these trials, and the trials were done with us. And those days, probably now if you work at SABC, you could do that. You could work for this department, work for another department, and work for another department, and collect all that money at the end of the month. I think they stopped it now.
Okay.
You can't do it. We used to do that. We used to work for the department. SC7's Layo, we used to do adverts, we used to do documentaries, we used to go and present. So when they were putting this whole thing together, so we started, they used us because of the proficiency of the language. And then I made the decision to move to sport completely.
When is this now?
I make this in 1982 when TV started. Because when TV started, I was doing both news reading and sport. Okay. So I used to come from, I stock a match on a Sunday afternoon and come and read news and go home. And on Monday I'm at work.
On TV1?
No, it was then, TV1 was for whites.
Okay.
Then, TV1 was for whites. Then. Into TV1 was the channel.
So Inguni languages,
they were all called SABC 2. Okay. What is now SABC 2?
Okay.
That was SABC 2, SABC 3. That was Nguni.
Okay.
Nguni was SABC 2. The Sotho languages were SABC 3.
Also, that's why in the Sky we never got SABC 3. We only got it later, or TV3, as it was called in the day.
Yes.
So you make this decision to do sport. How did you start with sport? PE sports discipline.
When we started at sport, one of our biggest area of content were the mines. The mines were very big in sport.
Okay. In
those days. Until Gwafigoma NUM, but no, you are lulling our minds with this sport. We want to do you want money.
Okay.
Sapela ngolo sport is mine. All black people who were something in sport came from the mines. In
you
cricket,
mean the miners themselves were playing?
Yes. Okay. What they would do, if you are good at any sport, you don't go underground. You're going to get a job in an office as a clerk because you are good at sport. That's what used to happen.
Ujosiah Tugwane loka 1996 wenza into ibisenziwa nge-80s.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's where our sport grew. Our sport, if you want to find out about the history of our sport, must talk to Professor Andre Odendaal. He's a good friend of mine in Cape Town.
I think you're knowledgeable enough.
Andre, Andre wrote a book called Cricket in Isolation.
Okay.
Stemming from the fact that cricket in South Africa was fragmented. Blacks had their own body, whites had their own body, Indians and coloureds had their own body. And therefore, what happened was in 1968, there was a coloured guy called Basil de Oliveira. Basil de Oliveira was from Cape Town. He played cricket, but they were playing on mats. And then there was all of a sudden there was this big uprising that sport must become open to all. Everybody must play sport. Everybody must represent South Africa. And there was that fight. It was a very small fight, but it became big. Because then an English team came to South Africa led by Peter Smith. And then they were challenged to play with these colours in Cape Town on a Sunday when there was no soccer, when there was no cricket. Because what used to happen, if they play a 5-day test, there used to be a rest day. So this rest day happened to be on a Sunday. And on that Sunday, they went to play with the colours and they lost that match. And then they saw this coloured guy, Basil de Oliveira. And the colours in Cape Town got around and they raised money to get this guy to go and play in England. Eventually, they get the money. These guys also put in money, these English players, and the guy went to England to go and play. When he got to England, he had to start right at the bottom, at the Lancashire League. The Lancashire League is a league that is a very domestic league, and it is at very low class. That's where he had to start because he was not used to playing on real cricket pitches. Okay. Here he was playing on mats. So then he worked himself up to a standard where he got selected for England. Wow. This coloured guy. And it happened at one time that England were supposed to come to South Africa. And the South African government were worried this guy might be picked to come and play against us. And then they said, no.
The same guy was not given the
opportunity
to play
the
because of the colour of his skin.
You see, those are the kind of things our people need to know. So the same guy who did not get opportunities to play for South Africa in South Africa goes to England. He gets selected for England to come and play in South Africa. And then the South African government says, no, that guy, in fact, South African was very clear about it. He must not be selected. The people who were playing nice and trying to be nice here were the South African Cricket Association people.
So government or politics has always been a part of sport.
Exactly.
Government politics.
Exactly.
No,
it's not new. It's always been there. And then the cricket people here try to talk to the guys in England that, hey, it's going to be problematic if this guy is selected because what? There's a policy. It's a government policy. There's nothing we can do about it. That's what they were saying. At the time, the captain of South Africa was Ali Bacher.
Okay.
The captain of South Africa was Ali Bacher at the time. So this guy then, there's a match he plays in against Australia and the West Indies, and he plays very well. But he doesn't get selected.
For the South African
tour. He doesn't get selected. So he's left out. And one player, a player by the name of Cartwright, withdraws from the team.
English player now.
Yes.
Okay.
And one player...
In protest of this guy not being picked.
We don't know. It's not said.
It's
not said he withdrew in protest, but he withdraws from the team. And the next best guy is this guy. He's included in the team. And all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose in South Africa around this issue of this guy. That tour had to be called off. That story is called in cricket circles the Basil de Oliveira affair.
Is it safe then to assume that this is your first involvement in sports broadcasting in cricket? Or did you
No. This story I picked up as I go along.
Okay.
When I started doing cricket, Again, in a controversial way.
No. Let's not go to cricket. How did you get into sports broadcasting? Which sports discipline did you start with?
The discipline that I started with was boxing.
Okay.
Funny enough, on the mines. We start on the mines because that's where we thought it's a good grounding for people to start. And then the nice thing for us, we used to love going to the mines because even though we'll get an S&T, we'll keep our S&T because the mines will give us food for free.
Okay. Which mines are these? Where about here?
The Val Reefs was one of them in Orkney.
Okay.
Val Reefs, we used to go a lot to Val Reefs because they build the Val Reefs used to belong to Anglo-American. And they built this huge stadium. I think it's just lying bare now. They built this huge stadium in Val Reefs for mine workers. And we used to go there a lot. We used to enjoy going there to Val Reefs. And then we started doing soccer in South Africa. We started with the Mainstay Cup because when we started in that year, the Mainstay Cup came up. And then we did all of the other things. One of the things, as I said to you in the car, I had to do, because I come from a rugby and cricket background, I had to make sure that I know my soccer. Then there was no Google, there was no internet. So we had to rely on a greater part of our research on magazines, on newspapers. You must get the newspapers on Saturday and Friday. You must actually read the newspaper every day.
So which is the specific newspaper that was your specific Google for back then?
No, the specific Google for me was the Star.
Okay.
The Star was very good. One of the things many people who grew up in my days will tell you they didn't want to read was the Sunday Times because it's too huge. There's too much to read. And you have this Business Times that is in the middle. And you don't want to read this thing because you don't understand the language, the business language. So there were also a few magazines. There were a few soccer magazines. One was owned by Abdul Bamji, and the other was, I don't know who owned the other one. Yes, a magazine. So we had to read these magazines. You had to collect these things and read them and do this. So that's how we gained our knowledge about the players. It is at a time also when many of our players played in the North American League. People like Asen Sulingwi, Jomo Sono. There's a nice story that is normally told about Jomo Sono. When he got married, Pirates was playing Swallows that afternoon on the Sunday.
I've heard that story.
And he, after the ceremonies, he asked, "Can I now go to play?" And they said, "Okay, you can go." And he left. When he got there, Pirates were down 2-0. And he got there, they took out one player, put in Jomo, and in no time, Pirates were square 2-2. Yeah. They end up winning that match. That's a story about Jomo that we enjoyed at the time. Then boxing came, and boxing was huge because we used to have boxing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. Now we don't have boxing
And
anymore.
You're not talking about Tom Marvin Hagley. You're talking about local boxing,
we're
right?
talking about local boxing. Huge local boxing. Huge local boxing. Marvin Haglers and the others arrive late, even though we follow their fights. We used not to sleep and wait for their fights.
Go
and watch those fights. And also, the other thing I got involved with was golf, which I quite like. I like commentating on golf simply because it is slow. You are not rushed. You can take your time. You can have your information there, open your information. But the first golf we did, funny enough, was a Sun City $1 Million Golf Challenge. Right. We had to go and do that golf, which is top notch.
How far back was this?
This was 1983. 1983. We started doing golf at Sun City. And for the first time, and we were not exposed to that, where you had a computer where you can follow the players. Where is so-and-so now? What is his score? Because you can't follow the players. You must sit on one place and watch the screen and talk about when you see what you see on the screen. And that is how we learned. For me, that was a big, big learning curve to be able to do all of those. The other thing I liked very much was athletics.
Okay.
Athletics commentary for me was the commentary. The things I never took, I said, no, not for me, was horse racing, karate, and judo. I didn't like those things.
Man, and to think, I only thought you did rugby, not boxing.
No.
But I mean, so many disciplines.
I did soccer, I did cricket, I did athletics, I did tennis.
Okay. So, I mean, it's been, 39 years
Yes.
with sporting industry. I mean, there must be memorable moments for you personally in terms of people that you have interviewed. And as I was saying to you earlier, I had spoken to Umundo Muhle, a colleague of mine, and he was telling me that, hey, you need to ask Dumile Mateza about his interview with that big-time boxer from America. But when your standout moments, maybe 3 that you can think of in your
there
career.
are many people I interviewed. I remember there was one time there was an athletics meeting in Petersburg, Polokwane, and there was this world champion javelin thrower, Jan Zelezny,
Okay.
who came to throw here at an athletics meeting. And whilst we were all trying to settle down, and what they normally do, they start with field events that are probably going to be problematic as we go along.
Okay.
So they started throwing the javelin. With one throw, the guy threw a world record. I was asked to go and interview him. Threw a world record. He said, goodness me, a world record with one throw. Jan Zelezny. I interviewed Jan Zelezny. The other thing, in 1992, when South Africa was readmitted by the International Olympic Committee,
Yes.
I was asked by the SABC. I think I had left the SABC already, but I was asked. I was doing commentary on a freelance basis.
What is this, Barcelona 92?
Yeah, Barcelona 92. So I went to Barcelona. When we left for Barcelona, there was a strike at the SABC.
Okay.
There was a strike at the SABC. This is during the late Zwelakhe Sisulu's time.
Okay.
So now, normally strikers meet outside on the lawn. And there's another thing I want to tell before this. I should have started with that.
Okay.
But they meet outside, and I said to them, look, and they were all saying, I must not go to Barcelona. You mustn't go because you're going to be in trouble with us. If you go, you are a sellout. You mustn't go. And I said to them, you know what? In 1987, I had a fallout with the SABC. I was at a tournament, boxing tournament at Sun City, where Mike Maisela, Arthur Maisela, was fighting Harold Volbrecht. And we felt that Harold Volbrecht got a cut above the eye, and halfway through this fight, Harold Volbrecht decided he's not taking part in the fight any longer. And then the referee, Alfred Bukwana, didn't know what to do, and the tournament director, who happened to have been Stan Christodoulou, stepped in and said it's a technical draw, which meant that Harold Volbrecht retains his title. And I stood up and I fought against that.
What were you there as a broadcaster?
No, I went there as I was invited by one of the producers.
Okay.
So luckily they called a press conference, and at this press conference I asked the questions. I asked, can you cite us an example anywhere in the world of a technical draw? Nobody could give an example.
This is post the decision.
Post the decision. Nobody could give an example until one guy who knew his job because he was a publicist for the tournament stood up and said, yes, there was a technical draw at the Rand Stadium where Martin Barnard was fighting Pete Krause for the South African light heavyweight title. Because it was an outside tournament, midway through the fight, it started raining and the fight had to be called off. And that fight was then declared a technical draw. And I stood up and said...
An act of God.
Yes. And I stood up and said, that was a technical draw.
Yes.
But tonight, your decision smacks of racism. And that's how I ended. I lost my job. I was fired by the SABC. 87. I was fired
for standing up for what is right.
I was fired by the SABC. And nobody, I told them there on the lawn, I said, nobody fought for me. I had to fight my own battles. So we arrived at Sun City, at Barcelona, the following day, after we left South Africa. We arrived. And then we hear the strike is over. Oh, now we are relieved you can work. So we worked. Barcelona was such an eye-opener. Because one of the things that happens is at the Olympic Games is that there's one big thing at the Olympics. It's the opening ceremony. And then I had to do Morocco. Okay. There's a guy called Said Owita from Morocco who was an 800-meter specialist and a 1,500-meter specialist. So Morocco comes in, and I have this name in my mind. And I said, do you remember? And I lost the name completely.
I've already forgotten it now.
Said Owita. Okay. That is commentary for you.
And it was live.
Live commentary. Many people have never forgiven me for that.
So there was no compensating or an alternative you could come up with?
No, I don't compensate. No, I can't.
Egg on your face. How do you carry on from such a blunder?
No, you must forget about it, because one of the things we do in commentary, when we teach people to do commentary, we say you must never draw attention to the viewer to the mistake. Go on as if nothing has happened. Don't draw the attention of the viewer to the mistake. That's what we say. So one of the things that I remember very well is in '96 we went to Atlanta. In Atlanta, my best time in Atlanta was my interview with Andrew Young. Andrew Young was the first black to be appointed by Jimmy Carter as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Okay. And just before the Olympic Games, he came because he was in the organizing committee. He's from Atlanta. He came to South Africa and got married in South Africa, and he was married by Bishop Tutu. Okay. So I asked him about this story. Why choose South Africa? Very nice interview. When I inquired about the interview, I asked, where is the interview? I was told it was wiped. I said, oh my word. Archives was wiped. And those are some of the stories that really resonates with me in commentary, because one of the things I have taught myself, when you are a broadcaster, become a complete broadcaster. Don't become a half-hearted, half-broadcaster, half-baked broadcaster. Become a complete broadcaster. Know the environment in which you are working. For instance, I used to go, if I was going to do a soccer match, which soccer starts at 3, but I would be there by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, I'm there. I'm at the stadium. Because one of the things you want is the atmosphere, is the ambiance, the all those things that goes. So, for instance, what I normally tell...
Get the feel of the build-up.
Exactly. I normally tell people, when Eric Tinkler was going to go and play in Portugal, I arrive at Wits and I stand around there, have a chat to people, and then I meet Eric Tinkler's father. And Eric Tinkler's father tells me that after the match, Eric Tinkler is going to the plane, is going to Portugal. I was the first to get that story. And in my commentary, I mentioned this thing, and everybody runs to me, wants to know, how did you get this? I said, no, I got it from his father. He told me. And that's what I get from going to the stadium early. You get all of these. For instance, one of the things that a lot of people, supporters of Kaizer Chiefs, Pirates, and all the other teams, they would come and ask me about a referee's decision because I was the authority, according to them. The other thing I enjoyed doing commentary on was boxing, especially in East London. East London is the only place in the world where a spectator would sit there and watch a tournament and watch a fight. And when a boxer is being pilloried, being beaten, the spectator would get up and go to that corner and say, do this and this and this and this, and go back to his corner, to his seat. And that boxer will do exactly what that guy was saying and win the fight.
And I mean, we grew up to you and Udix doing that comment.
Exactly.
I'd thrown social media, Facebook, that I'll be interviewing Dumile Mateza, and these guys were throwing Letem Yako, Persia Pa. How was that experience? Because
Well,
it looked like, it
experience-
sounded like you guys had chemistry in Apaya, no Dix.
Well, one of the things about Dixie was he liked boxing.
Okay.
He liked boxing greatly. He took a great deal of interest in the sport. And when somebody likes something and you meet halfway,
Yeah.
we used to have differences because I used to fight with him about, he used to say, I think so-and-so is ahead on points. I say, no, don't do that. You can't say so-and-so is ahead on points.
Yes,
Because-
influencer is
No,
viewers,
because what's
okay.
going to happen is one of the officials will be phoned by somebody at home. And that person will say, but that guy
Oh,
at the
Dixie
seat. And then he'll come to you and ask you, show me your scorecard. Don't say on my scorecard I have, so when you don't have a scorecard. If you have a scorecard, then you can say that. But also qualify that by saying my scorecard means nothing. It is the official scorecards that count. For instance, one of the things we used to be very good at are all the technical things.
Okay.
For instance, when a referee stops a fight and say I'm taking 1 point from you, from a boxer for doing something wrong, and he goes to each judge and say 1 point from him, 1 point from one. So what's going to happen? We used to explain those things. What's going to happen now is the judges are going to score the fight, not ignore it. They're going to write that point they are told to subtract on the side.
Okay.
And they're going to score the fight as they were going to score the fight anyway.
Okay.
And
And then
after the fight, the cards will go to the tournament director. And it is the tournament director that's going to
does the
subtract
subtraction.
the point.
Okay.
And people used to like those things. Say, this
I
guy's-"
didn't know.
You know, people used to like those things. And those are the things that make a commentator.
We miss you on TV. What's happening to sports commentary nowadays?
Well, I don't know.
What would you say is
It's-
different
it's-
when from your day in the 80s and the 90s and today? Specifically South African sports broadcasting and commentary.
Yes, one of the biggest problems we sit with in this country in all aspects of life is people don't want to read. People believe the things they read on Twitter. People believe the things they read on Facebook. People don't believe the things that are written in books. For instance, these days you can truly say, it is true what our forefathers were saying. You can take R1,000,000 and put it in a book and leave it here. Nobody will pick it up because nobody will open that book.
How do you get people to read?
Well, people must read. I don't know how do you get people to read today because there's fake news on Twitter. And people believe these things. For instance, one of the things I normally talk about, I had a big fight with a friend of ours whose name will remain nameless, who works for some radio station at the SABC. We had a big fight about a judgment, a constitutional court judgment. And she is posting a summary of the judgment, say this is the judgment. I said, no, this is not the judgment. Go and read the 150 pages of the judgment so that you understand why the court came to this decision. You are not going to pick it up in a summary. And that is the problem we have in this country.
Talking about social media and people believing what's happening in social media, I'm actually Googling you right now as we sit here. These are the results I'm getting. Dumile Mateza, Twitter.
Yes.
Dumile Mateza, tweet. And as I had said to you earlier on, I had told about I'll be sitting with legendary Mr. Mateza. They asked about this Twitter incident that had you in a panic and trending hashtag Maisho, please. You couldn't even spell his name fully. What happened, Pradums?
No.
People deserve to know.
I received this tweet, and for the sake of me, I opened it, which I should have opened. But because when I opened it, it registered on my Twitter account.
Okay.
And that is where the problem had. And people picked it up. One of the first people to pick it up was Sabelo Skit.
Okay.
So, and my showman. And then now I'm panicking. I don't know how to remove this thing. And somebody helped me.
WhatsApp.
Yes, I said my WhatsApp is hacked instead of my Twitter account.
Was it hacked? Oh yeah, it's just that phrase that everyone throws out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something happened. So
there you have it. It was not hacked.
No, it was not hacked. I opened a tweet that was sent to me.
Okay.
And then and it registered on my account. And I just don't know how that happened. It was a nightmare.
And I'm sure it's not that you didn't know how to delete a tweet, but panic of the moment.
You know, you don't know what to do, because now people are retweeting and sending messages and what. Luckily, others actually understood.
Yeah.
And others completely used it for their own ends. And you can understand that, because I always pick up a lot of fights on Twitter with the supporters of the EFF, and they had a field day. They had a field day.
How did you feel? How was your day?
No. I just
what was going through your mind? Panic mode.
I just said to, in the end, somebody helped. I think it's Andisiwe Makinana helped me. And Andisiwe told me, do this, and I was able to do that. But people had already taken this thing and retweeted it. So each time I had to go back and remove things, because one of the things that began to happen, people say, hey, you are trending. I said, well, I expect that.
Did you follow the trend?
No, I didn't. People said, you are trending.
It was quite funny, because Abantu, they had taken that hashtag. Obviously, we ballet in panic. I think I was sitting in my show, me please help, or something like that. And I think you ended up saying, my show, please. Right? So Abantu went with that, my show, please. And they were just tweeting stuff and adding that. It was a funny, probably embarrassing moment.
It actually says you must be very careful about social media.
Yeah.
When you get into so very careful. Probably I'm probably not careful as I am supposed to be. I still tweet, because I believe this is a free world. Anybody can tweet anything.
But I'm sure you got a lot of publicity in terms of your Twitter account. Did you keep tag of the number of followers you have? I'm sure you gained quite a significant number.
I think I now have about 8,000 followers. You know, it's broadcasting is not what it used to be. Because people don't understand the value of broadcasting. People don't understand the you get new people into the space, and you listen to, for instance, you listen to analysis on television, and you say to yourself, I don't know what is going on in this world. Because people tend to, I was listening to an interview on the arrival of the royal family couple here, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And people are asking, why do we have to be excited about the royal family? Now, what people do not realize, South Africa was a colony of the United Kingdom. And secondly, when Queen Elizabeth was appointed to the throne and her father died, she was actually here in South Africa.
Okay.
When her father died, King Edward, she was actually here in South Africa. And she was then had to be thrown into the deep end.
Early 20s, or was she in the late
She was in the late 20s, in the early 20s. She was thrown in the deep end to be the Queen of England. Yes. If you are going to talk about the royal family, give people the background. We were a British colony. As a result, the only time, one of the reasons why we had a detachment from the British colony is because we made ourselves a republic. Once you become a republic, you are taking yourself out of that milieu. Okay. We were also kicked out of the Commonwealth. We're not part of the Commonwealth. We went back to the Commonwealth after 1994. For instance, countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the head of state is still the Queen.
Okay.
And you must tell people those things if we are a broadcaster. But we don't get those things.
Yeah, young people nowadays are all about decolonizing. Because questions ziphoswa abantu apha ku Facebook. Uloyiso Mpalanchane uyabuza. Is it pressure power or pressure power? Boxing commentary.
No. I was doing the Rugby World Cup in 1995. And I kept saying pressure power.
Okay.
And there was a narrative by my friends who started saying, some white guy said, you're saying pressure power. What is this pressure power to me? I said, no, it's not pressure power, it's pressure power.
You maybe you
on
should,
the far side
you
of
should,
the world.
You should trademark or copyright that term.
On the far side of the field.
Hershey Pa.
Yeah.
Or Michael Buffer, they probably making imali go tin lando yake boxing.
Let's get ready
Let's
to
get
rumble.
ready to rumble.
Yeah.
Hershey Pa. Mateza.
You know, it is such. For instance, you don't get. For instance, if you throw a flurry of punches in boxing,
Okay.
and it gives you the picture.
Yes.
Because imvula iwa wow, imvula manqindi. And we don't get those that language. And one of the things I normally say to people is, a language is idiom. If you don't know the idiom of your language, forget it. Ulahlekile.
Ndiyafuna sitache kule nto towards the end.
Yes.
On that experience yakho yokuinterview Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. Oh, Mike Tyson arrives here.
Okay.
Brought out by Mike Tyson was going to come as how's this one? No, Mike Tyson arrives brought out by Rodney Berman. And we then decide, and then there was a discussion who's going to do the interview. Somebody at SABC wanted the interview to be done by Gwena, and someone said no, not Gwena. There was a big fight between the bosses at the SABC and the executive producer for boxing. The executive producer of boxing said, no. I'm going to have Gwena do the interview and Dumile is here. So we get this exclusive to talk to Mike Tyson.
What year is this?
It is recently, I think it was 2000 and, I think it was 2007, 2008, 2010.
Okay.
Around 2010.
Okay.
And we get this exclusive. We went to the hotel, sat there, waited for Mike Tyson. So we don't go to rush him. Waited for Mike Tyson. It's the only interview he's giving.
Yeah.
So Mike Tyson comes in. And we start the interview. We do the interview. And I did some research on him. I discover he was given an honorary degree by some university, by a friend of his who owned it. In America, people own universities. Yeah. And he was given a degree. And I asked him about this. And he said, no, he just so-and-so tried to make me look good. And I said, at the end, when I was closing the interview, that was my last question. And I said, like everything else in life, Mike Tyson didn't take the awarding of a degree, an honorary degree, to him seriously.
But how was it though? Mike Tyson?
No, he's a very approachable
intimidating?
person. No, he's not intimidating. He's a very kind person. People normally seem to think sometimes I intimidate. Now, many people thought I was intimidating because probably I spoke too much English. I don't know.
Is it because of the accent?
Yeah.
Where does this accent come from? I've heard that Uti, you are the first black model, see? Or some people call you that. No. Where does it come from?
People normally ask, but where do you get this accent? Because there were no model C's during your days. Yeah. I said, no. I taught myself to speak like this.
Okay.
I taught myself to speak Afrikaans the way Afrikaans should be spoken. I taught myself to speak English the way English should be spoken.
And that's probably one of the reasons you ended up doing what you're doing, because it's about languages, right?
It's about languages.
And how you express yourself.
It's about languages.
But now these are just terms, and these are cool. And I want your opinion on your view on these. What is your view on the Springboks, the rugby team, obviously?
In what way?
In whatever comes to mind when I say the Springboks. What's your view on the Springboks?
My view of the Springboks, I have nothing against the Springboks as a team, but I have something against the heritage, the legacy of the Springbok team, simply because it was a team that was used by the Afrikaners as part of the a power base. That's what they use it for. And one of the presidents of the South African Rugby Board then, Danny Craven, once made a very pertinent statement and said, black people will only wear the Springbok blazer over his dead body. I'm happy he's dead.
Danny Craven, we're Craven Week.
Yes.
You say Craven Week?
You say Craven Week.
How do we carry on with these into ezinjalo ne-legacies zabantu abanjalo?
It's a Craven Week. I've got nothing against that. You can stay the Craven Week. because there's also the Pitamkata week, there's also the Grand Khomo week.
What's your take on sport quotas?
Well, I don't think quotas count anymore because people get into the team because they deserve to be there. We don't speak of quotas anymore. That vocabulary is running out of time, running out of its time. I don't think anybody speaks of quotas anymore.
The future, what does it hold?
For
you, for sport in the country. For sport.
Well, one of the big things in this country is that we have not realized, it's few sports have realized, some have not, that sport is not leisure, sport is business. There's a concept that I'm working on, a program concept, television program concept, which I have struggling to get people to get traction to it.
Don't give out all your ideas. You know about what cool
to get traction to it, which is called the business of sport.
Okay.
The business of sport deals largely with issues like sponsorship, broadcast rights, stadium management, player management, and all of those things around merchandise, sports merchandise, all of those things around the business of sport, and listing of sports sports bodies and soccer clubs at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which has not happened in South Africa. Well, do I have a message? I can quote somebody who said, I think in the old days we used to have this quote when we were at school by Sir Winston Churchill. I'm sorry, I go back to the colonial days most of the time. And we are told Sir Winston Churchill failed and failed and failed and failed his matric at school. But he ended up becoming the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at the most difficult times of running that administration when there was a war, the Second World War. And he said, you must always try and try and try again.